Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into some truly profound metaphysical concepts. We're zeroing in on Chapter 3 of a fascinating piece of source material to unpack its intricate theology. We'll be looking impartially at exactly how it defines the human soul, the invisible world, and the ultimate purpose of spiritual practice. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's set the stage. The text we're analyzing today is Infinite Love by Ryuho Okawa. Right out of the gate, the author makes some incredibly definitive, uncompromising claims. You see, this isn't presented as just some abstract philosophy. The text outlines a literal, invisible world, active divine beings, and a highly structured cosmic hierarchy. Our goal today is simply to map out these exact claims, giving you a clear picture of the core framework the author is presenting.
To do that, we're going to follow the book's exact progression. We'll start with the human condition, move on to the divine revelation, take a look at the spiritual conflict, and finally wrap up with the spiritual resolution.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the human condition.
Before introducing any specific deities, the text establishes a really interesting philosophical baseline. It actually argues that the capacity for faith is the definitive dividing line between humans and animals. According to Chapter 3, animals just don't possess faith at all. Humans, on the other hand, have this unique, inherent ability to perceive the sacred and believe in the invisible. The text claims that recognizing this unseen reality is literally the ultimate proof of our humanity.
Which brings us to Section 2, the divine revelation.
Here, the text introduces its central theological framework, and chief among this is a figure identified as Lord El Cantare. The author describes El Cantare as the highest god and the ultimate leader of what's called the Earth Spirit group. The text even breaks down the linguistic meaning of the name for us, explaining that El Cantare translates to the beautiful land of light, Earth, while simultaneously signifying the victory of Buddha.
Building on this divine authority, the text then outlines 4 actionable teachings. These are presented as absolutely essential principles for modern humanity to really engrave in their hearts for a new era. They are love, wisdom, reflection, and progress. Now, the text goes into a lot of detail defining these steps, but I want to highlight 2 specifically: love and reflection. The book defines divine love not just as a warm emotion, but as a highly practical exercise in empathy. It's literally about putting yourself in another's position and strictly avoiding doing to others what you wouldn't want done to yourself. Reflection, on the other hand, is presented as almost a rigorous internal audit. It requires this constant, unflinching self-examination of your own thoughts and actions to ensure they align with the sacred. But, any structured path to progress usually implies that there are obstacles along the way, right? If we're meant to be marching toward this spiritual ideal, we have to ask, what exactly threatens this progress? What is the counterforce here?
That leads us right into Section 3, the spiritual conflict. The author doesn't pretend this spiritual journey is unopposed. In fact, the text introduces a very literal threat. It states that Satan and evil spirits are unequivocally real. The book actually goes out of its way to stress that these are not just metaphors or fairy tales. They're described as real, active forces working to drag people away from divine truth and deliberately plunge humanity into misfortune. So how do we deal with that? Let's look at Section 4, the spiritual resolution. Now, what's really interesting here is how the text says a person is supposed to survive this literal spiritual warfare. The author actually redefines a pretty common concept. In the face of this active evil, the text prescribes prayer, but definitely not just as a passive request. The text explicitly commands the reader to use prayer as a weapon of light. It frames faith as this active, tactical defense against dark forces.
And the mechanics of this defense, they're fascinatingly structured. The text emphasizes that you are never, ever supposed to fight this evil using your own individual ego or solitary strength. Instead, the strategy relies completely on unity. By exercising pure faith, believers supposedly unite with El Cantare and the entire heavenly spirit group. The author claims that when you tap into this massive collective energy, the dark forces simply cannot resist or withstand the light.
So, the really crucial point is this: the author's ultimate thesis is that when you completely abandon your own ego power and exercise absolute, pure faith in this divine hierarchy, the result is literal miracles. The text promises that this level of pure belief generates power so immense that it transcends all normal human limitations. We're talking about the ability to overturn time, space, and even the course of history itself.
The entire doctrinal framework of Chapter 3 essentially culminates in this one definitive guarantee from the author: believe and miracles will definitely happen. It's a remarkably bold, uncompromising conclusion to a highly structured metaphysical argument about the sheer power of the unseen world.
Which leaves us with a pretty compelling thought to walk away with today. Regardless of your own personal theology, the text poses a really fascinating philosophical challenge. Think about it. If, as the author claims, the capacity for faith is the single greatest proof of our humanity, literally the very thing that separates us from mere animals, how much of your own daily life is actually driven by a belief in things you cannot see? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.